Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So as probably some of you have summarized from the thumbnail or the video title, we're going to be talking about my Battlegrounds MVPs in Safeguard meta. And it's very important that people understand that this is not an attempt of me saying that these are the best champions for everybody. In fact, I often see a very big mistake, especially when I'm watching YouTube live streams where people have the champions ranked up and bring them on the Battlegrounds teams because they are good, but are not fully capable of utilizing those champions. So that is something very important that everybody needs to outweigh, whether it's worth it, whether your ability to play the champion is up to par and your knowledge about the champion. Because I have seen some atrocious fights with Mr. Negative, for instance, because Mr. Negative is not the easiest champion to play. Not that I'm perfect with him, but I definitely made sure that I do have relatively good comprehension of how to use him before I actually, add him into my Battlegrounds deck. Also knowing, obviously, that he carries value as a defender. Similarly, with any other newer champions, so on and so forth. So it doesn't matter how good a champion is, if you can't play it well, don't add it in. Learn how to use that champion, then add it to your Battlegrounds deck. And the second bit is, obviously, these are also my personal preferences. Champions whom I lean on more, who I happen to be drafting more, whom I rely on more. And again, you will enjoy different champions, and that's perfectly fine. I'm not saying that you're wrong or I'm right. I'm just sharing what works and puts in tremendous amount of work for me. So let's go to spot number 10. That is going to be Immortal Abomination. Immortal Abomination is one of those champions that is virtually a perfect draft quite early on because it does force opponent to have a defender for it, because if they don't have poison immune, they will not be happy in most cases. And then obviously Immortal Abomination absolutely destroys a whole plethora of opponents, so it is a very valuable champion both offensively and defensively. And the fact that he persistently heals on his own often lets you finish fights with very high health. And obviously poisons and acid wash lets you do a lot of damage over time effect, which is how you get past the damage cap. I've been using and drafting Immortal Abomination a lot. Now moving on is Mr. Negative. Now Mr. Negative could likely and would likely be a bit higher because I am not the best Mr. Negative player. I play him fine. I know he does. I know kind of how to do it. But I'm not super fluent and confident and comfortable with him. But again, obviously the more you use a champion, the more used to you get with it. And I feel like for me at the moment, I'm sufficient enough with Mr. Negative. And I also fully well understand what having Mr. Negative in your deck and means already. Because a lot of people, A, are afraid to fight against him because he can be quite tricky and does require fairly good counter, otherwise it can be a very, very hard fight. Then on top of that, just the fact of how well he does against certain defenders obviously affects how people draft further on, which, can pretty much be said for vast majority of the champions further on. But let's move on to spot number 8, and number 8 is Null. Now, Null is one of the best defenders at the moment. There aren't many people who fight this guy well. On top of that, I also run Inequity Mastery, which reduces opponents' damage output for each debuff they have. And most of the time when I play Null, people just time out or die. Because he is very, very tricky to fight with, fairly annoying level 2s. If he ever throws level 1, then, inverse controls are coming. And you need to be careful again for him not to debuff you, which is very, very hard. Because if he does, then then Inequity goes to work. And I was really surprised by this. I was really surprised by how well Null does against people. And he's pure magic. On top of that, he has access to those instant bleeds and degeneration, which lets him bypass safeguard as well. And he can spam his heavies whenever he reduces opponent's combat power rate. He has super multi-hit level 1s, and then you also get unblockable openings into opponents, and he just works. He's not the fastest champion offensively, but he can cover some of the vital matchups that you want and / need covered, like Killmonger, for instance, or Penny Parker. And then again, he's an absolute defensive powerhouse. Speaking of Penny Parker, and I'm not gonna lie, Penny Parker, as a defender, in my opinion, has kind of dropped in value. Most experienced people do dispose of her quite efficiently. And for some people, she's still very hard to find, but because she's always there, you know, a lot of people have learned and adapted on dealing with her, and she's nowhere near as troublesome defensively as she was, let's say, a month or 2 months ago. That being said, right now, she's one of the best nuke options, just with her level 2 and incinerates and the burst damage. As an additional bonus, she's one of the best Nick Fury counters if she's awakened, because she puts the heal block on Nick Fury automatically and then degens him and he just dies. And what makes her also quite interesting and good is that even though she's not the hardest anymore for a lot of people, specifically for this meta defense, she's really, really powerful because she's Incinerate immune and because she's Poison immune. And some of the most popular attackers are like Diablo, Immortal Abomination, Hyperion, so on and so forth. So it's not even that hard to find that easy to find a good counter for her right now. Now, if you know what you're doing, you will be able to deal with her quite well. But, you know, I think she's this high up in the list primarily because of her level 2 nuke and ability to deal with Nick Fury. And moving on, past Penny, I'm going to be putting on Kingroot. Kingroot has won so many matchups, offensively and defensively. Obviously, on defense, man's a tank. Man's just an insane powerhouse. Shrugs up debuffs, which obviously makes it hard for champions to put damage or time effects on him. Then he regens, and he has super major massive health pool and everything else, and long special 1 animation, and it's perfect. Offensively, number 1, it's another tricky, sneaky champion that, for instance, can take Killmonger, because you can armor break Killmonger permanently, you never have to worry about it. Awesome. And then you can just drop a level 2, pause the poisons, and it works like magic. And obviously, robots. He absolutely destroys virtually all of the robots that you're going to face off against with that massive special 2 burst damage and bypass safeguard. So Kingroot's actually really, really strong attacker right now as well. I think my usage of Kingroot has been around 50-50 offensively and defensively. Spot number 5. I'm going to put Nick Fury. Here's the thing with Nick Fury. He's arguably the most sought after and best defender. He's one of those champions you can see virtually in every match. Because of the double life, it just takes forever to kill him. It really does. It's not the easiest fight to begin with, you know, to balance his unblockability and make sure he doesn't rock his level 1s and all that other stuff. And then the double life comes in, and within 2 minutes, there are very, very few champions that can, you know, completely tear him a new one, if Archangel's banned. Offensively, though, he's nowhere near as good as people think. And also, maybe not as nowhere near as good as people think, but also his defensive value is just kind of too big, so he doesn't see too much offensive action, if that makes sense. And also, Bleed is kind of like the most commonly countered debuff. I think Bleed is probably the most commonly countered. So quite often you don't even really kind of get a good champion to run your Nick Fury off against. For instance, you know, Immortal Abomination, he can't do it because you need poison immunity. Then, you know, we're going to see a ton of, you know, bleed immune champions and stuff like that. So offensively, he isn't as powerful right now in Battlegrounds, especially in this meta. But defensively, he's like one of the conditions often for victory, or one of the cornerstones for winning your matches, just because of that extra life. Alright, let's move on. Spot number 4. And in this case, it's going to be Moleman. And Moleman overtakes Nick Fury, in my opinion, just because Moleman is a monster, offensively and defensively. On defense, unless you have like a very good mutant counter, you're probably going to be struggling a lot. Because not only he's fully shock immune, he will also shrug off all the debuffs, you know, up until he gets to 20. And even with like virtually a perfect counter, that would be, let's say, Bishop, because that's a mutant. He doesn't. It takes quite a while to get him down, and it's very, very easy to make that mistake and accidentally tap his block, and then he just immediately wrecks you with guaranteed crits and bleeds and everything else. He's a very tough defender. There aren't that many top tier great options to use against this guy. That being said, also on offense, the dude just destroys, because of on every guaranteed crit he inflicts bleed. So basically every hit is going to deal that damage cap of 1% damage, but those bleeds are going to carry on working in background. On top of all of that, he inflicts shock on opponent. That's more dot, and then every time you inflict bleed, he takes burst damage, and the man just puts in work. It's quite simple as that. He can absolutely nuke many fights. One of the best champions for this meta and, you know, previous metas as well, to be honest. Next spot number 3 is going to go to Overseer, because it's another example of a champion that definitely does work on defense, because he does have his auto block. He is quite chunky, and you know, you do need to be aware of this guy. His level 2 takes a lot of time as well, and he's poison immune, and he's immune to nullifies and whatever else not. But you know, he has won me fights on defense. But the biggest thing is his raw damage offensively, because as soon as you enter your power cosmic, you just nuke everybody down in like 2, 3, 4 combos pretty much, and then you can stun lock them for a while with your level 1s. And in Battlegrounds meta also, Mystic Defenders are quite common. He's amazing for vast majority of them, but it's not just that. There are like Hyperions where his taunt and whatever not comes into play just by making sure that the opponent cooperates and you can finish off the fights quickly. Champions like Mephisto can be absolutely nuked by this guy. An amazing offensive and defensive option. This time around, kind of slightly more of the focus on offense, I would say. Spot number 2, a champion that I just mentioned, actually, Hyperion. It's just one of those champions that forces opponents immediately to be aware, offensively, defensively, and fear this guy. Because if somebody has a Hyperion, they will want somebody that can deal with that power gain and has some sort of taunt or something else, or flat out power control, which is not the easiest thing to come by when you're dealing also with safeguard. And you're always kind of mercy on AI, so it makes everybody feel uncomfortable and a bit on the edge. And then you obviously do have his offensive power. Now, I'll be honest, he does suffer a bit offensively this time around because of safeguard, so his level 2 and level 3 are basically useless. And it typically is his level 1 spam, but that level 1 spam is so darn effective that, again, it is one of the best options for a ton of champions that you will be going up against. And then again, just the fact that he's like poison immune obviously helps out pretty much always. Also, he's definitely genuinely one of those champions that just tears through opponents' defenses or scares them into submission. And the top champion, the scariest champion in Battlegrounds today, Spider Ham. The pig is a monster. The pig is a Terminator. His power things completely bypass safeguard. He is annoying to fight against, especially if somebody's, you know, somewhat uncomfortable. But the thing is, his AI is just horrible. It's always super awkward to fight against him as well. And even when opponents use perfect matchups, they often get tanked because that AI and animations are very tricky. But offensively, the man just takes the cake. He can nuke down any of the so-called immortal, you know, mystic champions or high damage dealing options. And when Pig is in the play, everybody is afraid. He's faster legitimately than, you know, virtually anybody else. The Pig is absolute monster. Everybody should respect the Pig, fear the Pig, rank the Pig, and put it in their decks, because this little piggy wins more matches than any other champion in anyone's deck, I would be willing to bet. The Pig is an absolute monster. Now, that being said, few champions that were not included, and a lot of people are going to be mentioning, obviously. Number 1, I did not include Tigra in my top 10 MVP list, because Tigra could very easily be there, because she's solid on defense and absolute mad powerhouse on offense. But I personally am not that good with her. I have been practicing slightly, but I'm not yet there. And, you know, for me, I'm not going to put her in top 10 because I'm not as good with Tigra, because this is, you know, my MVP so far. She's been helpful. I won some fights with her. I have lost some fights with her as well because I got my butt kicked. And 2 obvious champions that are not included, that are virtually always banned. I personally ban them as well. Human Torch. Human Torch with no flame can pretty much destroy everybody you know, there are very, very few champions that Human Torch can't do this time around. Because you can just put on Null Flame and nobody's immune to Null Flame, and that's a damage over time effect, and then there are power stings, and Human Torch can, yeah, pretty much be used against everyone. That's why Human Torch should always be banned, as far as I'm concerned. Well, that's my banning strategy anyways. Just to take it out of equation, because, yeah, he can virtually attack everyone. And then another champion that's almost always banned, second most banned champion, and that's Archangel. Archangel, again, we have Safeguard meta, which Archangel does not care one at all about, and he just nukes down everything, and, you know, vast majority of the powerful defenders just get destroyed by this guy. And, you know, in my case, this is another champion that I virtually almost always ban, so I can't add him in my top 10 MVP list, because I think I have used him like one fight in this beta. So, yeah, no, Pig is the best. Pig is the best, I'm telling you. No, I'm serious though. Spider-Ham's so good. So good for this Safeguard meta. Well, either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know who have been your personal MVPs, and I will catch you guys later. See ya. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about